At 11:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. I almost ignored it. But when I saw my brother Daniel's name on the screen, something made me open the message. There were only 6 words. Kids are in a cab to your place. I stared at it. Then I read it again. His children? At my house? In a taxi? I immediately called him. No answer. I called again. Straight to voicemail. My heart started racing. Daniel never sent his children anywhere without telling me first. And certainly not this late at night. I grabbed my coat and ran outside. 5 minutes later, a taxi stopped in front of my house. The back door opened. My 8-year-old niece, Mia, stepped out carrying a pink backpack. Behind her came 6-year-old Noah, holding his stuffed dinosaur. I looked inside the taxi. No Daniel. No Rachel, his wife. Nobody. The driver handed me a small envelope. Your brother gave me this, he said. I opened it. Inside was enough cash for the ride and my address written on a piece of paper. That was all. I looked at Mia. Sweetheart, where's your dad? She looked down. He said you would take care of us. My stomach dropped. I brought them inside. I made them something warm to eat and tried to act calm. But my mind was racing. Why would Daniel send his children to me without warning? And where had he gone? After they fell asleep, I checked their bags for emergency contact information. That's when I noticed something strange. The children weren't packed for one night. There were several changes of clothes. Toothbrushes. Medicine. School notebooks. Even copies of important documents. Daniel hadn't sent them to me for a few hours. He had prepared them to stay. Then I found an envelope underneath Mia's clothes. My name was written on it. My hands began to shake. I opened it. Inside was a handwritten note. I knew you'd take them. You're the only person I can trust. I sat on the edge of the bed. The words didn't make sense. Daniel and I had argued only 2 days earlier. He had asked me for a large amount of money. I had finally told him no. He became furious. You're my sister, he'd shouted. Your family. I had answered. Being family doesn't mean I have to keep fixing your mistakes. He hung up on me. And now he had disappeared. I looked at the note again. Then I noticed another paper underneath it. A bank statement. My name was highlighted. I read the account number. Then my blood ran cold. I had never opened that account. And suddenly, I understood. Daniel hadn't sent his children to my house because he needed a babysitter. He had sent them because he needed someone to take the blame. The next morning, I barely slept. As soon as the bank opened, I called. I gave them the account number from the statement. The woman on the phone became quiet. Then she said, "Ma'am, you need to come into a branch immediately." My hands went cold. I left the children with a trusted neighbor for a short time and went straight to the bank. When I showed them my identification, they confirmed something terrifying. The account had been opened using my personal information. But I had never opened it. There had been multiple transactions. Large transfers. Money moving in and out. And some of those transactions were connected to Daniel's business. I felt sick. Daniel had used my identity. I called him. Nothing. I called his wife. Her phone was disconnected. Then I remembered our argument. 2 days earlier, Daniel had said, "You'll regret turning your back on family." At the time, I thought he was just angry. Now those words sounded completely different. When I returned home, Mia was sitting quietly at the kitchen table. I sat beside her. "Mia, did your dad tell you why he brought you here?" She hesitated. Then she whispered, "He told us not to tell you." My heart sank. Not to tell me what? She looked toward Noah. Then she said, "Daddy said if anyone asks where he went, we don't know." I couldn't speak. This wasn't an emergency. It was planned. Daniel had prepared the children. He had prepared the documents. He had prepared the taxi. And then he had disappeared. I contacted a lawyer. I showed him the bank statement, Daniel's messages, the taxi receipt, and the note. He read everything carefully. Then he looked at me. "Do not delete anything." "Why?" "Because your brother may be trying to make you responsible for something he did." Those words changed the way I looked at everything. I stopped trying to find excuses for Daniel. Instead, I started collecting evidence. Every message. Every receipt. Every transaction. Then I found something else. The taxi receipt showed Daniel had booked the children's ride earlier that evening. But there was another ride. Booked for him. It happened shortly after the children arrived at my house. The destination was the airport. Daniel had left the city. But he had made one mistake. His flight reservation was under his real name. I gave everything to the authorities. Then I waited. 3 days passed. No Daniel. No explanation. Then, on the 4th night, my phone rang. It was him. His voice was calm. Almost too calm. "Are the kids okay?" I looked toward the living room. Mia and Noah were watching television. "Yes," I said. Daniel sighed. "Good. I knew I could count on you." Then he said something that made my heart stop. "I need you to lie for me." For a few seconds, I said nothing. Daniel continued. "If anyone asks, tell them I had to leave because of work." I stared at the wall. "You disappeared with no warning." "I had no choice." "What about the account?" Silence. Then his voice became colder. "You don't know anything about that." I almost laughed. He knew. He knew exactly what was happening. And he expected me to stay quiet. "Daniel," I said, "what have you done?" "You're my sister. I need you to trust me." There it was again. Family. Trust. The same words he had used every time he wanted something from me. Money. Favors. Excuses. And now a lie. I took a deep breath. "Okay." He sounded relieved. "I knew you'd understand." Then he hung up. What Daniel didn't know was that I had already spoken to my lawyer. Every message had been saved. Every document had been copied. And now his phone call had given investigators something even more valuable. His own words. The next morning, an investigator contacted me. "We found more transactions." "How much?" He told me. I couldn't believe the amount. It wasn't a small mistake. Daniel had been moving money through the account connected to my identity for months. Then the investigator said something even worse. "We believe this may not be the first time." "What do you mean?" "There may be another person whose information was used." I sat down. Daniel hadn't just betrayed me. He had done this before. I suddenly remembered how often he had asked me to sign documents for his business. How many times he'd said, "It's just paperwork." I had trusted my brother. Now I wondered how many times that trust had been used against me. Then came another call. Daniel was returning to the city. Apparently, he believed everything had calmed down. He thought his children were safe with me. He thought I was protecting him. He thought I would keep lying. He was wrong. That evening, Mia came into my room. "Are you mad at Daddy?" I looked at her. "No." She looked confused. "Then why did he leave us?" I sat beside her. "Sometimes adults make choices they shouldn't." She looked down. "Is he coming back?" I didn't know. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going to lie to her. Not anymore. The next morning, my lawyer called. Your brother's flight lands at 3:20. I looked at the clock. 2:47. What should I do? He paused. Nothing. Nothing? Let him come to you. I understood. Daniel thought he was returning to a sister who would protect him. He had no idea that while he was away, everything he had hidden was already waiting for him. Daniel returned 3 days later. He probably expected me to be waiting. Maybe he thought I'd hug him. Maybe he believed I'd keep his secret. Maybe he thought his children being in my house meant I was still on his side. At 3:20 p.m., Daniel's flight landed. He walked out of the airport carrying a small suitcase. He looked relaxed. Confident. Almost relieved. He probably thought the worst was over. It wasn't. Investigators were waiting for him. Daniel immediately tried to explain. He claimed he had left because of a business emergency. He said he knew nothing about the account. Then he tried to blame me. He told them I had access to his business information. But the evidence was already there. The bank records. The taxi booking. The airport reservation. The messages. And the phone call where he asked me to lie. His story collapsed piece by piece. Then investigators found the previous victim. Another relative. Someone Daniel had also manipulated years earlier. The pattern was undeniable. Daniel hadn't made one bad decision. He had built his life around taking advantage of people who loved him. And I had been one of those people for years. I used to think revenge meant making someone feel the pain they caused you. But I learned something different. My revenge was simply refusing to save him from himself. I didn't destroy his business. I didn't expose him publicly. I didn't threaten him. I simply told the truth. And the truth did everything else. Months passed. Daniel's business collapsed. The suspicious funds were investigated. The people who trusted him finally learned what he had been doing. But the hardest part came later. One evening, Mia sat beside me on the porch. Can I ask you something? Of course. Did Daddy send us away because he doesn't love us? My heart broke. I took her hand. No, sweetheart. Then why? I looked at her. Because he knew you would be safe with me. She was quiet. Then she leaned against my shoulder. For the first time, I realized something. Daniel had tried to turn his children into part of his escape plan. But they weren't responsible for his choices. They were innocent. And I would never let them believe otherwise. That night, I looked at the original message on my phone. Kids are in a cab to your place. When I first saw it, I thought my brother was asking me for help. Now I understood what it really was. It was the beginning of the moment I finally stopped protecting someone who had never protected me. Daniel thought being my brother gave him unlimited chances. It didn't. Family should mean love. It should mean trust. It should mean standing beside each other when life gets difficult. But family should never mean becoming someone's shield from the consequences of their own actions. For years, I thought saying no to Daniel would make me a bad sister. Instead, saying no saved me. And that became my greatest revenge. Not watching him fall. Not celebrating his losses. But standing there, completely free from his control. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't hurting the person who betrayed you. It's becoming someone they can never manipulate again. And when you finally stop protecting a person from the consequences of their own choices, you don't need revenge. Their choices do it for you. He was wrong. When he arrived at the airport, investigators were already waiting. Daniel tried to act confused. Then angry. Then innocent. He claimed he had left because of a business emergency. He said he had no idea about the suspicious account. He even tried to suggest that I had created it. But every lie created another problem. The bank records didn't lie. The taxi records didn't lie. His messages didn't lie. And his own phone call didn't lie. Most importantly, the children had arrived at my home with bags packed for an extended stay. It showed that Daniel had planned everything. He had prepared his children. He had prepared the taxi. He had prepared his escape. But he hadn't prepared for me to stop protecting him. Investigators also discovered the previous victim. It was one of our relatives. Daniel had borrowed money from him years earlier and later used his information for another financial scheme. Suddenly, the pattern was clear. Daniel wasn't unlucky. He wasn't trapped. He wasn't desperate. He had made a habit of using people who loved him. And I had been his favorite person to use because I always forgave him. That was over. Months passed. The legal process continued. Daniel lost his business. The money was traced where possible. The people around him finally learned the truth. But the hardest part wasn't watching Daniel lose everything. It was watching his children realize that their father had lied to them. One evening, Mia sat beside me on the porch. "Uncle? Yeah? Is Daddy coming home?" I looked at her. I wanted to give her an easy answer. But children deserve the truth. So I said, "Your dad made some serious choices. The adults are handling them." She was quiet. Then she asked the question that broke my heart. "Did he send us here because he didn't want us?" I immediately shook my head. "No. He sent you here because he knew you would be safe with me." That part was true. And maybe it was the only decent decision Daniel had made. Mia leaned against my shoulder. For the first time since that terrible night, I felt peace. I finally understood something. My revenge wasn't destroying Daniel. It was refusing to let him destroy me. I didn't scream. I didn't threaten him. I didn't lie for him. I simply told the truth and let his own choices speak for themselves. Daniel had spent years believing that because we were family, I would always protect him. He was wrong. Family should mean love. It should mean trust. It should mean helping each other through hard times. But family should never mean sacrificing your future to protect someone from the consequences of their actions. That night, I deleted the old message from Daniel. The one that had started everything. "Kids are in a cab to your place." For weeks, those words had represented fear. Now they represented something else. The moment I finally chose myself. And sometimes, the strongest revenge isn't getting even. It's becoming the person your betrayer can no longer control. Because when someone uses your kindness as a weakness, the best answer isn't cruelty. Tease boundaries. And once you stop protecting the person who keeps hurting you, their own choices become their downfall.